Hi guys, today we're taking a look at a Nikon F-401x. In the United States, these were also called N5005s. This particular one was free. It was given to me by a good friend. Value on eBay for one like this is about $20. This is working, but I had to clean the battery compartment quite a bit to get it to work. These were made from 1991 to 1998. The F-401 and consequently the 401S and the 401X were Nikon's first consumer-based autofocus cameras. It has a large built-in battery grip integrated through the lens metering flash, TTL flash, and a thumb wheel aperture ring and shutter speed adjustment. It has both matrix metering mode, and that's the default, and center weighted metering mode, and that only happens if you're in manual mode or if you hold in the AEL, the auto exposure lock button. Basically, it's the same as an F-401S. The difference between the S and the X is pretty minor. So if I miss anything on this video, if you watch the previous video I did on the F-401S, that'll cover that camera in relatively detail. The only differences between the two cameras are this one has autofocus tracking, which frankly I've tried and I couldn't make it track worth a darn, but it claims to have it. The shutter speeds are the same range, except this one has a T mode and doesn't have a B mode, and the 401S had a B mode and didn't have a T mode. The self-timer is slightly different on this one. Instead of just a single self-timer, it has a self-timer with two modes. You can either take one picture or two pictures. And the top cover is different in the layout. And on the front, the Nikon sign on the front is bigger and moved over to the side more. And the location of this red stripe is different. In fact, here's a comparison of the 401S and the 401X side by side. So you'll see the Nikon label is pretty much the only difference on the front. And on the top, get these right side up, here's where the difference is on the self-timer and the regular timer. This one, you press it once and it'll set the self-timer, but if you press and hold it for more than 3 seconds, it'll set the self-timer for the same 10-second delay, but it'll take 2 pictures at the end of that cycle. The dials here are set up essentially the same way, except there's a plastic cover on this one and they didn't have one on this model. And that pretty much is the only difference in the top. So let me go back to just the 401X. On the front, this is the auto exposure lock button. You must hold it while you're shooting, so it's not like a toggle it. You have to hold it to lock. And when you lock, it'll change to center weighted metering, and it'll hold it there, and you can reposition to take your shot with your other finger on the trigger button. This has a pop-up flash, and these two buttons here release the pop-up flash. There's a minimum aperture lever at the bottom base of the lens here. And if I remove the lens, you can see that. It's the lever right there. This is the lens release button. This is the auto manual focus button. And of course the lens with the focus ring. This one came with a 35 to 70 zoom, and it's measured in both feet and meters. That's the focus ring, which stays locked unless you're in manual focus mode, which I'm not sure if I can do. Let's try it. Yes, if I flip the lever on the side, then I can focus. If I put this lever back, then it locks it, and it'll only do it with the motor drive. The big knurled is the zoom range. There's 70 millimeter, there's 35 millimeter. There's a little toggle flip here for aperture ring lock, right now it's in the lock position, so the camera controls the aperture ring with this dial here instead of doing it manually. So if I try to change the aperture, well, it actually moves, but I guess it's not locked. Now it's locked and the camera controls it. If you flip the lever forward, I don't know if you can see that, then I can change the aperture manually, which you would probably never want to do on this camera. And again, with the lens off, these are the autofocus contacts, and on the lens they're right here. And that's the little lever for changing the aperture. And this little tab right here on the lens is what hits this lever here to tell the camera which aperture lens you have mounted. When you align these, you use the line up here, the white line, to match that white dot. And like all Nikons, you turn counterclockwise to lock the lens. Again, here's the self-timer button. Right now the front dial is in the L position for locked, so I can't take a picture. But so basically that turns the camera off. This button has to release these dials when they're in the lock position. They only lock in the S on the aperture ring and the L and the A on the shutter speed dial. So if I push the button down, I can get it to some other setting, like 0.002 of a second. And now we're in shutter priority mode. And now this should take a picture. And you'll see the hello. There, I had to get it within range of the light in this room. So now it'll take a picture. At the end, it stays lit for the last couple of seconds, then takes the shutter. Now, if I hold it down for more than 3 seconds, then it's flashing fast. Now when I let go, again, that flash is each second for your 10-second countdown timer. And when it gets towards the end, it goes to a solid light and it'll take 2 pictures. And we're done. Okay, again, this sets the shutter speed. And you see it did an autofocus. I think it's not light enough there for that shutter speed. And we're saying shutter priority, so it's taking over. I have to push the lock button to get the aperture ring to move. It has settings for 1.42 and so on, but of course they wouldn't mean anything with this 3.3 lens, so I have to get up here before it actually changes the aperture. And this button is to rewind the film. There's an auto rewind. If you have this lever and you push this, it'll attempt to rewind the film. There's no film in it right now, but it doesn't know that. And of course we have a shutter release and the frame counter window. Not much on the top. On the right side, all we have is a strap plug. On the left side, all we have is a strap plug and the back release lever. If we pop that, you can see in the back. You notice these contacts here are to, the DF contacts are to determine the type of film speed you have. So with this roll of film, which is 400 speed, these contacts will tell this camera that it's 400 speed film. So we just insert that in there, pull the leader out, stick it down in there a ways. You can feel it's caught on one of the gears. Close the cover. And then you press the first shutter button. And advance the film to number 1. If I had loaded it incorrectly, the red light for the self-timer light would be flashing. Now you see every time I take a picture, it advances the frame counter. I could rewind the film now, but then I wouldn't be able to practice loading it since it's just a dummy roll of film. The window on the back shows your film. This window has this dial that spins to show you that the shutter advance mechanism is working. It doesn't want to take a picture because it's trying to focus at, I'll try this. Hopefully you could see that thing spinning. And on the bottom is a tripod socket. The battery compartment, it takes 4 AA batteries. This battery compartment is probably kind of dirty, but I did manage to clean it up and put 4 batteries in it. It's got a good battery compartment lever, good grippy handle, fun little camera. Again, if you want more information, perhaps watching the video I did on the Nikon F-401S, the previous model, this one, might answer some questions that aren't answered in this one. Thanks a lot for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video.